as a retirement advisor, one of the things that I've seen is just how important it is for my clients to have a feel for what their expenses are going to be in retirement. And that's why in today's video, I want to share with you what the average retiree spends so that you have some information to help guide your thinking on this. It's so important, in fact, when I meet with a new client, that's where we start. When we work with retirement planning, it isn't how much have you saved, but what does retirement look like for you, and what do those expenses look like? So let's go for a walk and I'll share with you what the average retiree spends in expenses. Okay, so the good news is we don't have to guess. We have really good data from this. The Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out a report, and they slice and dice this data in all different manners, importantly by age, but also in a lot of different categories, so it's super helpful. And if you look at it by age, let's just start there. We're going to get to the retirees, but let's start with 45-year-olds. So 45 to 54, the average household spends a little over $90,000 a year. Now, frankly, that surprised me, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics has access to all kinds of great data, so I do believe it's correct. It's $91,074, and that's average household income. Now, averages can be skewed because there could be people spending a lot of money in retirement that skews that number higher. A better number would be the median. Half the people spend more, half the people spend less, but we don't have that data. But we do have for the average 45 to 54-year-old household. It's a little over $90,000 a year. For 55 to 64, it goes down a little bit. It goes down to just under $80,000 to $78,079. And then for people that are 65 or older, and this number I do believe, this number is $57,818. And this is as of 2022. But interestingly, that jumped 20% since 2020. So the difference between 2020 and 22, that 57,818 is 20% higher than what it was just 2 years earlier. So you can see that, inflation has been real. We really have been seeing it. We've seen it at the gas pumps, we've seen it at the grocery store, and we've seen it all over our lives. So that's what the average 65-year-old is spending on a household basis. And a household would be if there's a married couple in a household, if there's 2 adults in a household, if there's 1 adult, whatever it is, that's the household. And again, that number is 57,818. Now, let's look at what some of the main drivers are for people's expenses. And one of those obviously is healthcare. And I think a lot of us believe that, well, once I get to 65, I can really throttle down on what I'm budgeting for healthcare. And I wish that was the case, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics data would say that's not the case. And I'm going to share these numbers, but then I'm going to share with you what a report from Fidelity says we should, each of us, budget for healthcare costs not covered by Medicare. So 45 to 54-year-olds, the average household, spends $6,100 a year in what they're paying for healthcare. So, let's say that you've got a good healthcare plan from work, and your copay on that's $400. Your part of the premium is $400 a month, so that would be just under $5,000. And then the rest of that, the difference between $5,000 and $6,100, is what people are paying on copay and out of pocket. So 55 to 61, it's $6,700. From 65 to 74, believe it or not, it keeps going up. And it's actually $7,400 from 65 to 74, $7,400. And 75 plus, it's over $7,500, it's $7,700. So that number resonates with me and passes my sniff test. And the reason for that is outside of Medicare, once we turn 65, Fidelity would say the average 65-year-old needs to budget a little over $155,000 a year for our healthcare costs that are not covered by Medicare. That's a significant piece. That's over $300,000 for a couple. So medical costs continue to be a significant driver for us. Okay, now let's look at home ownership. So people 65 plus, 3/4 of people, 77% of people 65 and older own a home. Now, interestingly, so it's 77%. Of that, 47 percentage points of that 77 have no mortgage. And there's 30%, right? 47 and 30 is the 77. There's 30% of folks 65 and older that own a home, but they still have a mortgage. And so the rest of that, the difference between the 77% and 100%, obviously those folks are renting. So this gives you a feel of what the average retiree spending is. Again, 65 plus is $57,818. Now, let's go back to that rule of thumb that I mentioned earlier, where I said, I'm not a big fan of rules of thumb, but one of the rules of thumb is you're going to spend about 80% of what you spent when you were working. You're going to spend about 80% of that in retirement. So how good do these numbers do? Well, if you look at the 57,818, which is for people 65 and older, you can see that that is 74% of what a 55 to 64-year-old would be spending. So, and that's just before most people retire, right? It's like 6% of 50 to 55-year-olds are retired, and about 12% of 55 to 60-year-olds retire. And then when you get to 65 to 70, it's about 70% of folks are retired in that category. And then, believe it or not, like 75 plus, it's still 12% of people continue to work, and hopefully most of those people are working because they want to. So does the rule of thumb work? It's in the ballpark, but I think, we're all different. It depends on what you want to do in retirement. So a rule of thumb will get you close, just like doing a financial plan or using an online retirement calculator. People ask me all the time, do those work? Can I use that to give me an idea? And the answer is yes, you can use them to give you an idea, but you don't want to make the decision whether you retire or not based on a free online calculator. You want to work with somebody that's helped hundreds of families. Now, admittedly, I'm biased, but before you pull the trigger and you actually retire, I want you to have confidence in retirement. I don't want you to accidentally be spending too much, or, in my opinion, equally as bad, I don't want you to be unnecessarily sacrificing and find out, I could have spent more money. And I think many people unnecessarily sacrifice. There's a study that was done by BlackRock, which is the world's largest money manager, and their study showed that the majority of people, over half, still had 80% of their assets, their retirement assets, 20 years into retirements. And frankly, I see that a lot when somebody comes to me later in retirement. Maybe one of the spouses has been running their investments. One of the spouses did the retirement plan. And maybe they're 75, maybe they're 80, and their go-go years are gone, and their slow-go years are gone. And now they're, I like to use the term when you first retire, that's the youth of your senior years. And sometimes folks come to me when they're in the old age of their senior years, and they can't turn back the clock. And we look at the numbers and say they could have spent a lot more money. They could have had adventures. They could have done those trips that they wanted to do. And unfortunately, they were sacrificing unnecessarily. And I don't want to see that happen to you. I don't want you to unnecessarily waste the youth of your senior years, which are your first 5 to 10 years of retirement. Also, I don't want you to hold on to working because you think you need additional money. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. So have a plan. And when we're 60 years old, here's why it's important. When you're 60 years old, unfortunately, most of us have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time in front of us. That's not a lot of time. We want to take full advantage of that youth of your senior years, which is why I made this video here, 5 reasons to retire as soon as you can. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye.